following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Top of the key, triple. Richie Saunders, fourth three-pointer of the night. Massive make.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Good evening. Welcome on into Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. Loaded hour coming up as we break down BYU basketball. The Cougs are rolling. 4-game win streak. Times are good right now for this BYU team as they get ready tomorrow night to take on number 20 Arizona inside the Marriott Center. And we're asking you, how much does that Marriott Center atmosphere change when a top 25 team rolls in to the Marriott Center? We'll bring in Matt Baiamonte now. And Matt, these are good times right now for Cougar hoops, and they're also good times for us because Luka Doncic is a Laker, right?
Wow. Man, that was a seismic trade of the NBA. But what BYU basketball doing right now, Mitch, is becoming seismic in the Big 12. They're moving up the standings. They've got a huge week ahead. You got to love the direction of this BYU basketball team.
That we do, and let's break it all down right here in the takeaways.
Cougar Nation, takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
BYU takes down UCF 81-75. You might think, yeah, UCF, that's not that big of a deal, right? Well, UCF's a quad one win. That's the Big 12. You know, teams that you would think their logo on the jersey doesn't register much thought, but UCF's been a good basketball team, particularly at home. They took down Texas A&M this year. They won a game at Lubbock against Texas Tech. So BYU took down that team 81-75 and got a coveted quad one road win. They're now 6-4 in Big 12 play, Matt. And, you know, what was some of your big takeaways coming out of this win for the Cougs?
I thought this was the most impressive win of the season so far, considering the lack of contributions that you got from your two talented freshmen and Dallin Hall. Yegor Demon made his only bucket of the game. Now, it was a critical one. It was a big-time three late in the game, but you get 3 points from him. It doesn't feel like you got much in terms of just impact from him. Cannon Catchings, who had that huge game against Baylor, did not follow up that game with a big offensive game. And then Dallin Hall continues to disappear, and it's hard to understand why he continues to disappear. But if you would have told me a quad one game on the road and you get next to nothing from those three players, which at the start of the season, if you wanted to pick three guys that you thought were the best players on the team, if not all three, two of those three would have been on everyone's top three, and they did not have a great offensive performance, and yet you win on the road, a quad one game. I just thought it was so impressive. The contributions of Mawot Mag, Keba Keita, Richie Saunders, I mean, he continues to shine. He continues to do what he does, but just a really, really impressive win where the supporting cast came up big.
That they did, and that supporting cast, you mentioned him, Mawot Mag, who I think we heard 17 different pronunciations of his name during that broadcast. Mawot Mag! It's like, come on. Like, that's why I was prompted to then put on social media, hey, here's the pronunciation from Mawot himself. But he has become more than anything I would have ever expected from him in his one season at BYU. Remember, Matt, when he signed out of the transfer portal, you just thought he's a defensive guy. You never would have thought 19 points, 6 of 10 from the field, and then he adds 5 assists too.
Yep.
Kevin Young earlier today talked about the offensive improvements from Mawot Mag.
In terms of Mawot's offensive contributions, I think he's really buying into how we're playing. I think he stripped away some of the inefficient shots he was taking early on, where he's really streamlined things in terms of attacking the rim. I know he had 19 points last game, but him having 5 assists I thought was big too. His ability to put it on the deck, get to the paint, play off 2 feet, and kick it out for shots was a really good sight for me.
Really impressive performance, Matt, and I think his maturity in that starting five, BYU, if we've noticed in recent games, feels like the Cougars are getting off to better starts. And, you know, you don't solely point it to one guy, but I think Mawot's helping out that cause.
And in a day and age where there's so much talk about unlimited transfers and NIL, it's nice to see a guy like Mawot Mag who came in, probably had high hopes of having a large role, and he wasn't playing. at times in non-conference play, Mitch, but he waited his turn, he waited his time, and then lo and behold, his number was called. He was ready for it, and he delivered in a big way. That was a monster performance for Mag. My second takeaway, Mitch, the evolution of Richie Saunders is like nothing I've ever seen before at BYU. You look at his first 2 years, and he was a fan favorite, and he was a good player. How many of you at home know how many games Richie Saunders started in his career prior to Kevin Young getting the job? If you're guessing 0, you're incorrect. But if you guess 3, which is not far off from 0, you would be correct. 2 games started as a freshman, 1 last year as a sophomore under Mark Pope. And then this year he has exploded. He is well on his way to being a first-team All-Big 12 player. His three-point shooting numbers, and he was outstanding against UCF, Mitch. 6 of 9, making clutch buckets down the stretch. He's up to 45% from 3. That's nearly a 10 percentage point jump from last season. His scoring up, his three-point shooting is up, his overall field goal percentage is up. Everything is up. I mean, this is a huge testament to Kevin Young and this staff that they were able to identify the right role for Richie, and now he is flourishing. He's going to be on NBA radars. I don't know if he's a second-round pick or a NBA Summer League guy, but this dude is clearly destined to play professional basketball at the highest level, and it's incredible. Just think about last year. We all wanted him back when he went to the portal. No one in their right mind, including me, you, and probably Kevin Young. Maybe Kevin Young saw this, but we certainly didn't. First team All-Big 12, number 1 option on the team, leading the team in crunch time with clutch shot making. We did not see that last year at all from Richie, and for him to have become what he was a season ago to now, I can't think of any comparison from one year to another in the history of BYU basketball. It's unheard of. It's a testament to him and his work, and boy, is he fun to watch, Mitch.
What's impressive, too, is that his stats got better in Big 12 play. When you focus solely on the 10 games in Big 12, they've all jumped up. He's third in scoring in the Big 12. He's number 1 in three-point field goal percentage, number 1 in three-point field goals per game. Richie Saunders has been absolutely impressive. My final takeaway is just the fact that BYU had 17 turnovers against a UCF team that was speeding BYU up. I mean, that pressure after the half-court line, they were physical. And first half, they weren't getting any fouls called on them.
Oh,
and BYU was getting sped up and coughing up the basketball. 17 turnovers, and they still win a game. I think that's a positive sign, too. And it also shows that when BYU's hitting the 3, they can take down anyone in any venue. 14 threes for BYU. We got to take a break, though. On the other side, we'll get to more breakdown and answer the question of the day about the Marriott Center and the atmosphere that happens when a top 25 team rolls into Provo. We want to hear from you. 801-575-8255. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte. It's Cougar Nation, sponsored by Central Bank, serving Utah County for over 133 years with trusted service, modern technology, and personalized care. Cougar Nation here on KSL.
How many things affect your life as much as slow traffic and bad weather? Listen tomorrow morning for traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back in. It's Cougar Nation, sponsored by Central Bank. This show is for you, BYU fans, and we open up the phone lines, which we never do on a Cougar Sports Saturday. So if you want to get live on the air, sharing your thoughts about this BYU basketball team and or answering the question of the night, how does the Marriott Center atmosphere change against a top 25 team for BYU Hoops? We'd love to hear from you. 801-575-8255. Before we answer this question ourselves, Mitch, though, I think we do need to quickly address that seismic NBA trade. Tell us where you were and your thoughts, because I can't remember anything like this happening in the NBA to this scale and this size. It was truly crazy to see someone of Luka's status and stature traded at that age in his career.
Remarkable. It's going to be one of those moments. I'm glad
and the Jazz are a part of it.
I'm glad you bring it up, because when you say, where were you? Because I remember 17 years ago when the Lakers traded for Pau Gasol, and that changed the NBA landscape. I was at Walgreens and Draper, and I got a notification, an email notification on my T-Mobile Sidekick 3. Yes, that's how long ago that's been. So this situation, I was in my office. I was kind of poring over some Big 12 basketball box scores and things like that, and then I see that news, and I'm thinking to myself, like I double, triple, quadruple checked if that was the real Shams Charania. And sure enough, it was. And it just, I couldn't believe it, just to see those type of superstars being traded in season one. And then just usually there's a windfall of picks, and they'll only give up AD. And I say that lightly. I mean, AD is an incredible player, but Luka Doncic, I mean, to be only, turning 26 at the end of the month, and the Lakers get that. The Lakers always seem to find a way to get superstar players. That's just, they have this incredible ability, whatever it is, and some people want to put on the conspiracy hat, tinfoil theories, but they find a way, and Luka's a Laker, and it's going to be must-see stuff. I mean, that's going to be, I'm going to be captivated to see how that plays out, and you wonder, too, how much Danny Ainge, a former BYU Coug, now obviously working with the Utah Jazz, how much he truly knew. I know there's been reports that he knew basically nothing about this, because if he had known Luka was on the market, he's giving up every asset that the Jazz own to get that guy. It's pretty wild stuff how secretive it was.
It truly was. In a day and age where it feels like everything leaks and you have an idea of something coming. Speaking of leaking, we're starting to see some leaks on the Big 12 football schedule that's going to be released tomorrow morning. Everything leaks, and yet this just comes out of nowhere, this huge trade, and for the Jazz to be a part of it too, that's going to be a trivia question, I think, for a long, long time. Who was the third team in this seismic NBA trade that gave up nothing and took on nothing? It's like I don't even know what role they played other than maybe salary matching, but just a crazy moment. You don't get a lot of those in sports when it comes to transactions. Maybe if you're lucky, one or two a season, but to this stature, it never happens. It was crazy.
Maybe, Matt, do you want to see the next phase in college basketball and college football construction trades? Is that the point we're going to get to eventually? Hey, you might be enjoying your major here at BYU, but we're trading you to Utah.
No, I do not want to see that. Excuse me? Someone's in a final. Pull him out of the testing center, because we're getting him on a flight immediately.
Oh, that's great content. That's good content, Matt. We need those videos. We need the social media videos.
Excuse me, player number 0. Put the test down, put the pen down, and get out of the building now.
I hope we don't get to a point where college sports is dealing with trades, but it's wild times. You never say never with any of this stuff anymore. And one thing that I'm glad that we never say that this happens is BYU basketball hosting big-time games at the Marriott Center. In the West Coast Conference, outside of Gonzaga and St. Mary's, there wasn't much of this. And tomorrow night, BYU hosts the top 25 team, but a historic program, the Arizona Wildcats, come to the Marriott Center for the first time since 1998, and it begs the question, how does the Marriott Center atmosphere change against a top 25 team? Do you believe it changes much?
I don't think it does. And honestly, that might come off as a negative, Mitch, but I really think it's a testament to this fan base that has embraced basketball ever since Jimmer Fredette came in and had that historic year. We've seen some teams, like you mentioned, St. Mary's come through, and that place is rocking. And we saw that a lot last year, even against teams that weren't top 25, great atmospheres. I think this fan base, don't sleep on this fan base as being a good basketball fan base. They will show up for games that aren't necessarily top 25 teams. Now, when a team like Arizona comes in, I do think that people will be in their seats sooner than later, because sometimes it is a late appearing crowd to some of these games, especially these weeknight games. But when a top 25 team comes to town, I think you'll expect a packed house. It's full, but I do believe that this fan base shows up night in and night out, and that's a testament to them.
That they do. I do believe that these games against top 25 teams and maybe programs that have a little bit bigger brand on the logo do get the students revved up more. And to your point, this is a smart fan base. BYU fans, they understand the moments. This is a fan base that when a player goes on an incredible run or has some great defensive performances, they'll give a nice ovation to those players when they get checked out of a game. I mean, they follow the trends. They know the history. They know when a record's being broken. They get that. But I do think the student section goes to another gear of intensity, and I can't wait to see what The Rock looks like, because I have a feeling with it being a late night tip, that's right in their wheelhouse. They're revved up for a late night tip off, unlike most of us old folks who are probably like, 9 p.m.
I'm dreading it. I went to bed at 9 p.m. last night. I'm dreading this.
9 p.m. tip's going to be a bit late for us, but the students are going to be hyped, and I imagine they'll probably be loaded and sold out 90 minutes before, and Arizona will probably be thinking, what? This is way different than the Pac-12, where all these venues were empty when we would roll in, and I think that's just great. And I think that, this is a dream of BYU fans for so many years. I mean, you're telling me that in a stretch of a couple weeks that Arizona, last week it was Baylor, in a couple weeks it's going to be Kansas, are on the home schedule for BYU basketball? Matt, just 2 years ago, we were trying to hype up the idea of, San Diego's going to be tricky, man. It's going to be tough. They're Ken Palm top 150. You don't have to sell that. This is Arizona. This is Baylor. It's Kansas. Like, come on now. This is big time.
Let's get out to the phone line, Mitch. Mike in West Jordan, how does this Marriott Center atmosphere change when a top 25 team comes to town?
Yeah, hi, guys. I was thinking of a couple things. I remember when Mark Few came for that big game, I like to call it the blue game, he said the BYU Rock came in 2 hours before the game started. He said that impacted my players, I think, even in the warm-ups, let alone the game time. I also think of Coach Pope. After a big game when we would win, he would comment on the Rock and the impact it had on the free throw shooting and the impact it had on the game. And I think a lot of the people that have paid attention to this realize that we're almost like the 12th man for Texas A&M, but we're the 6th man for BYU. And if we step it up at the right time, we yell and do what we can to rattle the players, it can actually have an impact on the game. But I've even noticed in people around me that if it's a big-time part of the game and we're struggling or we're behind, you hear people yelling constantly, screaming. The crazy guy next to me, for example, is always yelling at the tops of his lungs. And I noticed that you really step it up when the game's on the line. So I think for a game like this that's so important and has such a high weighting, I think it's going to be a big difference in the atmosphere from your typical game.
Thanks for the call, Mike. BYU comes into this matchup 6-4 in Big 12 play on a 4-game win streak. And Arizona, they're tied for first place, 9-1 in Big 12 play. So, yes, this is a big game. And Mike's right, Matt. I mean, the Rock does play a huge role in these games, particularly the free throws. I know that's become almost a little bit funny thing this year with the whole Chick-fil-A free chicken. Back-to-back games, they've been getting free chicken with missed free throws. But it's a great venue, and it gets loud. And when it's energized, like I expect it's going to be on Tuesday night, man, it just makes for some great memories.
I just wish it was at a better time because no one on the East Coast is going to watch this to see a great atmosphere. But nonetheless, let's not complain too much. Arizona's coming to town, and we're playing meaningful basketball games in February. It's a beautiful thing.
Just a couple weeks ago, we'd have thought this matchup might have been, BYU could be completely out of sight, out of mind, not playing for much. And to be in a position where they're now in brackets again, and Arizona's near the top of the Big 12, it's exciting times for Cougar Hoops. Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank. We'll take a break. On the other side, we'll get to what's trending up and trending down for this BYU basketball team as they get ready to take on the Arizona Wildcats tomorrow night, 9 p.m. tip, and you can listen to it right here on KSL. More after this.
Be ready for BYU Game Day. Download the KSL News Radio app to stream BYU games, plus breaking news during the week. That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Welcome back into Cougar Nation here on KSL News Radio. Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte with you. Every Monday night we hold it down here on the legacy home of the Cougars, talking BYU hoops. And it's your show, Cougar Nation. We want to take your phone calls, 801-575-8255. You can get on board with us, share your thoughts about how the atmosphere changes at the Marriott Center when a top 25 opponent rolls into town, or just give your general thoughts on this BYU basketball team. It's your show, so call in 801-575-8255. But right now, let's get to what's trending up and trending down with the Cougs.
Cougar Nation, trending. What's trending up and what's trending down this season?
Let's start with the negatives, Mitch, and then we'll end on a high note, the positives. Trending down for me is Dallin Hall What is going on, Mitch? I cannot figure this out. He plays over 24 minutes against UCF. 1 field goal, 0 of 1. Gets to the free throw line, 1 of 4. I like that he's taking care of the ball, 5 assists to 2 turnovers, but I'm not seeing any aggression. And I thought after that kind of breakout second half against Oklahoma State, we were going to see that guy more times than not, but he seems to have regressed back into this passive role, watching Yegor kind of run the offense. I can't figure it out because he plays a good chunk of the game without Yegor, and yet we still don't see that aggressive Dallin Hall. And Kevin Young has talked about this for weeks. Like, they want Dallin Hall to be aggressive. They love aggressive Dallin Hall. They want him to drive to the basket and shoot the threes, and yet we're seeing too many performances where it's 1 field goal, 2 field goals. There's not enough impact from Dallin Hall right now, and this dude, I believe, is a upper echelon guard in the Big 12. I don't know if he's ever going to be first team caliber, but you can't tell me he's not one of the top 8 point guards in terms of talent and impact in the league, and yet you've got nowhere near that production from him this year. I cannot figure out what's going on with Dallin Hall, and unfortunately, he's trending in the wrong direction.
You're right on, it just seems like he's not aggressive and looking for his shot at all. And it's just so puzzling because, you bring up, being a, potential all-conference guy. He was last year, honorable mention all Big 12. And when you're in that conversation, you're a, top 10 point guard. And when you're a top point guard in the Big 12, that means you're one of the top guards in college basketball, and he's just not a threat offensively right now. And to your point, I do like that his ball movement's still good. He was still second in the team, tied for second with 5 assists, along with Mawot Mag and Yegor Demon with 6 assists. But, even late in the game, Kevin Young has a lot of trust in Dallin still, despite maybe the lack of aggressiveness on the offensive end, because late in the game, Yegor and Dallin are on the court together. But even when it's not with Yegor, there's still just not much offensive production from him. And that kind of got highlighted, too, because when we talked about trending down, I want to point out 2 other reserve players. Dawson Baker, he had a little bit of a step back. I thought it was one of the rare off nights for Dawson. He was 1 of 5 from the field and 0 of 4 from 3, 0 of 3 from free throw line. I don't think we're going to have another night like that from Dawson Baker again, but that was a little bit of a step back from him when he was getting his name a little bit in some of the headlines. And then Cannon Catchings kind of reminded us he is a freshman, and it's not a consistent product every single night with him yet. After a perfect performance, he goes 0 for on shooting. But I did like what he contributed on the defensive end, 5 rebounds, and I thought he was being active on the defensive side of things. So he's improving there, but the offensive game, like many freshmen in college basketball, it's up and down every single night, and that's kind of one of the reasons why Catchings is coming off the bench still, and Mawot Mag is comfortably in that starting lineup and playing some big minutes for BYU.
Trending up for me is Keita. I thought he had a nice game. 10 points, 7 rebounds. He had some big free throws in the second half, and I just think that his fit in this scheme is becoming more and more apparent. He played 8 more minutes than Foose did in that game, and Foose is going to have his games where he's a matchup problem, and he has it going, and he plays more minutes. But I think night in and night out, you're starting to see Keiba's willingness to set hard screens, to rebound, and then it doesn't hurt when you have a couple monster late-game blocks that protect the rim as well. I loved his playmaking at the rim, completely shutting the door on any UCF chance at a slight comeback after Dallin Hall missed those 2 free throws to keep the door open. Foose closed it. Keita closed it. And I like the way that he's playing. I think he's truly emerging as that rim-running, rim protector, alley-oop type guy for Kevin Young's scheme.
I like the comment, too, that Justin Young, Kevin Young's brother, and he's also the director of recruiting at BYU basketball, he shared something on X about some of the greatest athletes he's been around. And this is noteworthy because for people that aren't familiar with Justin Young, he was at the grassroots level recruiting, heavily involved with, covering some of the best prospects to come through the high school ranks in, say, the last 25 years or so. And he put Keita in his top 10 athletes that he's ever seen in person. He put it next to Zion Williamson, Josh Smith, Aaron Gordon, Dwight Howard for some perspective. So Keita is awe-inspiring. I mean, every game he has a play or two that just kind of blows me away. I think we talked to Chris Burgess about this a couple weeks ago where we asked him, do you ever just kind of get numb to these wow moments from Keita because he seems to do it all the time? And Burgess just said the guy's incredible how explosive he is. And it was nice to see him getting a little bit more done on the offensive end beyond just simply the alley-oops. Like, he had a little bit of touch around the rim. Yeah. And he knocked down 2 big free throws, too, late in the game. I thought that was impressive from Keba as well. I got to point out, my trending up is just the fact that BYU navigated its lowest point, what I believe is the lowest point of the season, the loss to Utah, the loss to TCU. Yet they're at the midway point of the year, Matt, and they're 6-4. And to have a winning record at the midway point after the manner that they were losing games where they could not find any answers in close calls, they got hammered at Houston, like many teams do. I just think that I believe that their toughest days as far as the low points of this group are behind them. Now, they're still going to have some losses. This is a tough schedule ahead, but I think that you look ahead to these next 10, BYU could be favored potentially on the high end, I think, in 8 of these 10 games going forward. The predictive metrics love BYU. They really do. And they've been high on them throughout this entire season. And Kevin Young talked about this gauntlet of a schedule in the Big 12 and the 20-game slate that he's navigating with this team, and even drew some comparisons to the NBA.
Obviously we have the built-in Sundays off, which has actually been a real nice thing, quite frankly. So we try to sprinkle in other days off where people don't get run down and things like that and try to keep everything fresh. So the 20-game gauntlet, it is a gauntlet because it's just a level of intensity in each game. That's one of the big differences of NBA regular season to college regular season is there's very few nights where it's not just going to be a dogfight. In the NBA, you get cupcake games all the time because guys are on back-to-back, this, that, the other. There's so many variations of what each game looks like, whereas in this, it's, if you don't bring it, you're going to get smacked.
Great commentary from KY, and I think it illustrates why college basketball still kind of has that fun element of what's the word I'm looking for here, Mitch? It has the – gosh, the English vocabulary, it's fading from my mind. But
passion?
No, not passion. Urgency is what I'm looking for. There's urgency in college basketball that you don't quite get in the NBA. Even today, as the NBA is approaching the NBA trade deadline and the All-Star game this month, is there any urgency? Like, most teams are still in play to get to the postseason, whereas BYU, for instance, since losing to Utah, has pretty much been in a situation where we got to crank it up or we're going to run out of time to qualify for the NCAA tournament. They're in a much better place now. Still not a finished product. They have to go out and at least win at least 4 more conference games. If they can get 5 or 6 more, I think they're squarely in the NCAA tournament. But you love that urgency because a game like tomorrow against Arizona, it has tremendous value and impact on your ability to play in the NCAA tournament. And the focus is there, the fan base is going to be there, the attention's going to be there. And being in the Big 12, Mitch, we get – how many of these games do we get? Out of the 20 they're playing this year, are 14 of those 20 games, do they feel like the ones that are going to feel like tomorrow? Because that UCF game felt that way. It was urgent, it was important, and the team responded. We get a lot of those in the Big 12, and it's just fun to have so many of those games that feel big, because I just don't feel that in the NBA right now, but I love that we feel that for BYU in the Big 12.
Let's talk more about that big game coming up tomorrow night, BYU and Arizona on the other side, and Cougar Nation is brought to you by Central Bank. Central Bank serving Utah County for over 133 years with trusted service, modern technology, and personalized care. Central Bank, proud sponsor of Cougar Nation. Give us a phone call last moment to get on board with us, 801-575-8255. Share your thoughts on this game and the enhanced atmosphere at the Marriott Center, what that brings when there's a top 25 opponent that rolls into town. It's Cougar Nation here on KSL.
Cougar fans, use this radio station tomorrow morning for important news updates. Listen to Utah's most important radio station tomorrow morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Cougar Nation here on KSL. Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte. It's the last chance to get on board, folks. Last call, 801-575-8255. Share your thoughts on BYU basketball. We also want to know our question, how does the Marriott Center atmosphere change against a top 25 team? BYU last year was 3-1 against top 25 teams. The lone loss was to Houston, but they notched 3 victories against San Diego State, Iowa State, and Baylor. And they got another opportunity, the first of the season this year in Provo. Arizona comes calling, number 20 Wildcats, 9 p.m. tip right here on KSL. You can watch the broadcast on ESPN. What are your thoughts, Matt, on BYU taking on Arizona?
I love the matchup. This last time, and probably the most vivid memory I have of this game. Mind you, I'm in my 30s, so I don't have this rich Rolodex of Wildcat Cougar basketball. But you remember the one up at the Delta Center where Derek Williams was coming into town against Jimmer Fredette, and this Arizona team was a high-flying, and early on, Williams had this massive dunk and saluted the fans, but ultimately it was BYU getting the job done. I love that this game is being played at the Marriott Center, because if they weren't conference opponents, I don't see how you ever get Arizona here. And now you get to enjoy a true home court advantage against a blue blood program. And if you win this game, too, I think it gives a lot of credibility to this program, to Kevin Young. Is it the Super Bowl? Is it akin to winning a conference tournament game? No, it's not to that level. But when you beat a team like Arizona that is ranked at home, where everyone expects them to come in and win, and they've had some nice wins lately, Mitch, some really nice wins. There's a reason they're top of the conference, and it's not out of luck. They're really talented. They've got a dynamic star offensive player in Caleb Love. I think they're deep. They're athletic. This is a great game. It should be a tremendous atmosphere, and I just love that we're getting this game at the Marriott Center, because I didn't go to the game where Jimmer popped off down in Tucson for 49 points. I didn't go to that. The one I went to was at the Delta Center, and that's the best you could get in non-conference play against Arizona at the time. Now you get him at home in the Marriott Center. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I remember that game. I remember that was also the game where Matt Carlino was on an official visit, and he was being dubbed the next Jimmer Fredette. It was that was a big deal. I remember watching the 2009 game where Jimmer popped off for 49, and I was on a Tucson radio station today, and the host of that show was saying he's been going to Arizona basketball games since 1977 when Arizona was in the WAC. And he said he's never seen a standing ovation like that for an opponent. Jimmer still has the McHale-centered record, and you think about the talent that's rolled through Arizona, and to have that record, that's pretty special stuff. But I even remember that 1998 game. I was there when Arizona last visited the Marriott Center, and that was an epic game. Mark Bigelow was a true freshman, and Arizona was at the heights of, like, you couldn't have had two more opposite programs. 2 years removed, BYU was the worst team in college basketball at 1-25. Arizona was 2 years removed from being the national champions. Arizona was in their heyday of knee-high socks, the cats on the socks. I loved Arizona back then, and BYU hung tough with them, and that was that game that had that unfortunate cheap shot elbow, Eugene Edgerson, Bart Jepson. I mean, I love Arizona basketball. I love their history. I love that passion of that fan base for that program. I think they are just such an awesome fit in the Big 12. Next to Colorado football, among the four corner programs, Arizona basketball was the biggest get that the Big 12 acquired. And you're right. I love seeing this game be played in the Marriott Center, because it would have never happened had it not been a conference game, and to get a brand like Arizona rolling through the Marriott Center, and it is a big deal. And to play talents like Caleb Love, who you noted, Caleb Love's a big-time player, a senior for the Wildcats. He had a huge game last week in their win over Iowa State, knocking down a 60-footer to send it to overtime. This was BYU coach Kevin Young on the challenges of slowing down Caleb Love.
Yeah, I mean, he's an electric player, very experienced. He's a guy that can, erupt for 30 on any given night, explosive scorer, and they give him a lot of freedom. And he'll put a challenge on us collectively. It's not just one guy. We got to do a job on him and try to, not limit his, his shot attempts, but I just think, trying to make everything difficult for him. I think that's the best way to try to disrupt very good scorers, is just try to make them really have to work super hard for everything that they get.
Do you give the initial assignment to Mawut Mag to slow down Love?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great tactical move by Kevin Young. And you have the ability to, with Richie and others, to kind of mix those coverages, but I think you start with Mag and kind of see where it goes. And I liked his commentary, too, earlier today, that you don't necessarily try to take the ball out of the hands of a Caleb Love. They're so gifted offensively. At the end of the day, you just have to make them work hard. And I think BYU does have 3 capable defenders that they could throw at Caleb Love. Mag is a great one. Richie Saunders, I think we all know how fantastic he is. And I think, too, maybe throw a little Trey Stewart into the mix and potentially pick this guy up full court. Trey Stewart got a shout-out today from Kevin Young for his defensive ability and his willingness to take on a role that is not heralded on this basketball team. He played 8 minutes against UCF. So you've got options to slow this guy down, and if you can make him work, it's okay if he drops 20, but if it takes him 20 attempts to get the 20, then I think you've done your job defensively.
And I love that Kevin Young is not afraid to dig into his bench. There's games, there'll be stretches of games, weeks maybe where someone doesn't play. Kevin Young's got confidence in these guys to give quality minutes. I mean, Trey Stewart had not played 8 minutes in a game since non-conference play, and he gave him some valuable time, and he performed. He did a nice job on the defensive end. So I love that willingness from Kevin Young that he always keeps every player on the roster ready. Maybe Mihailo Boskovic could have some value in this game. Arizona is a very good rebounding team. BYU is too. Arizona had a lot of success late in their game against Arizona State on Saturday, creating second and third opportunities. That's what put it over the top for them. So BYU has to win on the glass. I know you've been tracking that, Matt. That's a big stat for BYU.
+6 against UCF. That played a big role against the Knights. They have to attack the glass. And I think they're leaning in a little bit more to Kay Bakeda. He's been a force on the glass. Their guards have done a better job. That might be the most important stat tomorrow against Arizona. Who wins the battle of the boards?
It's going to be a lot of fun. We will have you covered inside the Marriott Center. You can listen to the call tomorrow night, 9 p.m. tip right here on KSL. We'll have online coverage, digital coverage on KSLSports.com, and we will talk to you on Saturday with Cougar Sports Saturday. So catch you tomorrow night inside the Marriott Center for BYU and Arizona right here on KSL.